Hi everyone! We're going to be starting a new series on the full build out of the electrical system on the boat. This is a project that took over 6 months to do, and there's an awful lot to cover. So I think there's going to be a few videos certainly on this, just the full build out of all of this. In this particular video, I want to go over a few key points to get us going. I want to cover reasons for the upgrade. I want to cover the 3 different designs that we went through. I want to cover the mechanical designs that we did for the boat and the major components and why we use them, as well as work to be completed before we could even start this project. Before we start, I want to say that I am not a registered ABYC electrician. I did all this work myself, so take it all with a grain of salt. And it's not to be used as a DIY for other people for certain. All right, so let's get into the reasons why we did the upgrade in the first place. One of the big reasons was capacity. Originally what we had were 6 AGM batteries giving us about 900 amp hours, and that sounds like a lot of capacity. But with AGM batteries and lead acid batteries, you can really only take them down about 50% before you have to recharge them. So that really kind of cuts it down to say 450, and that just wasn't enough for us at all. Another thing we wanted was complete access to all the components of the whole boat, actually, all the electrical stuff, while we were on battery. So before, we would have to crank up the generator if we wanted to run any of the air conditioners, if we wanted to run the clothes washer, the RO, our water maker, or even the hot water heater, really. So that was kind of a problem. It always made us super reliant on that generator, and I wanted to be able to run everything on the entire boat off the batteries. Another thing we were hoping to do, since we can now run the air conditioners off the batteries, is to be able to run an air conditioner overnight on battery. Before, like I said, we'd have to have the generator running, and it's kind of noisy, and it's just kind of a waste of power, really, to run that thing all night long if you're just running a couple of air conditioners. Much more efficient if we can just use the batteries. Another nice thing about lithium batteries, a couple of nice things about lithium batteries, let's talk about voltage fade. So on lead acid batteries, as their capacity starts getting used up and they start to run down a little bit, their voltage drops dramatically. And we have a lot of electric motors on board. The winches, the windlass, the tender lift are all electric motors. And as the power from the batteries would drop down, the speed of those motors would drop as well. And so you'd be trying to raise the main or something, and the winches would just start to slow down and slow down and slow down. Same thing if you're pulling up the anchor. Lithium batteries are really cool that they hold their voltage very, very flat even as they're discharging. So you don't notice that voltage fade much at all. It makes a huge difference on that stuff. Another cool thing about lithium is that it charges so much faster than lead acid or AGM batteries. You can dump massive amounts of current into these batteries, and then as you get to the top and you get within, like, I don't know, maybe 15% of the top, lead acid has to whoa, chill out, because you don't want to overheat those batteries and boil them. Well, lithium's like, bring it on. It'll bring it all the way up to the top almost at full power. You can charge so much faster, which means that when we do run the generator to charge the batteries, it runs for a lot less time, and it gives it a really good solid workout. Generators don't like to run under low loads. We also wanted multiple charging sources. We added, you saw in the last videos, we added our full solar system, and these are all the MPPTs for that behind me here. So we wanted to be able to charge the entire system off of the solar if we could. So it was a matter of kind of balancing the sizing and all that. Which brings me to the electrical designs. Now we went through 3 different separate electrical designs, on full designs actually, build outs on the whole system. We went with a 12 volt, a 24, and a 48. Let me run you through what the issues were with all 3 of those and why we ended up in the end going with 24 volts. 12 volts sounds like a great place to start. The whole boat is 12 volts. You'd have all your batteries as 12 volts. They'd all be in parallel, so they're much easier to keep balanced. And it's very easy to power everything. You don't need converters to go from 12 to 12 volts. You don't have any of that. So it's just much easier to pass the power onto the rest of the boat. It sounded like a great way to go. The big problem is the amount of current it would take in order to make the whole system work. Part of the problem is we have these massive inverters. So these are 5,000 volt amp inverters. There's two of them running in parallel. The output of the two of these are 240 volts. The output goes into our auto transformer here. The auto transformer splits that 240 into 220 circuits and gives us our neutral. So that's great, gives us access to everything on the boat, which is awesome. But the amount of power it takes to do that is pretty crazy. At 12 volts, the wire size was ginormous, and the currents through the buses could be up to 1,600 amps. And I couldn't find equipment, actually, that could satisfy that, for sure. The wiring would have been ginormous. It would have been all 4/0 cable and duals at that, so it just seemed like it was not really practical at all. What about 48 volts? That's very common now. People are moving up to 48 volts because the wire size is 1/4 the size. So that's great. That's a great way to go. Much less wire, much less loss. It really is something to seriously look at. But for us, that would have put 4 of these batteries in series. And keeping batteries balanced in series is very difficult. 2 of them alone is difficult, but all 4 of them together would have been a bear, getting them to constantly be balanced. Another big issue with 48 volts for us was the solar. Now our panels, we have 4 of them on that back array here. Each one puts out, I don't know, close to 48 volts. Well, that's just not enough. In order to charge a 48 volt bank, you have to be several volts above 48 volts. And lithium really runs at 52 or 53 volts. So you'd have to be somewhere around 56, 58 volts from each of the panels in order to get that to work. The MPPTs will not step up voltage. That's just not the way they work. So that's a problem. Well, what would you do? You could put 2 of them in series and pop their voltage up to 80 something volts, and then that would satisfy that requirement. But it also links the 2 panels together. So if you get shading on one of them, they're like batteries in a flashlight, you're going to lose out on the other panel even if it's not shaded. And we would only be able to have 1 MPPT for 2 panels. I don't know, we lose a lot of the flexibility that we have with this big array. Another big problem was our coach roof array, our 2 20 volt panels. So the best they can do is 40 volts in series, and that's just not gonna cut it. So I was like, well, shoot, we can't even use it? What are we gonna do? Well, the only solution would have been maybe to drop it into the 12 volt house bank, and that would have been complicated, super complicated to get that all balanced. At any rate, the other problem with 48 volts is getting down to 12 volts. Victron specifically doesn't have on the market 12 to 48 and 48 to 12 volt converters. Now I have seen them, I know they have some prototypes and things, but they don't regularly market those products. So that's a problem too. I was looking at Sterling, which is a great piece and would do that. It's a buck boost. It'll go both directions. It's really kind of a neat piece. It wasn't too crazy expensive, but I would have had to step outside the Victron lineup of products and things, and I just thought, something's just not right. So we ended up with a 24 volt system, and that has been working great for us. So it's in what they call a 2S 2P, so 2 in series, 2 in parallel. So you have these 2 in series batteries and 2 sets of them, and those 2 sets are then paralleled together. That gives us some cool redundancy as well. So if we lost a battery, we would lose maybe one of those strings, but we still would have the other string running at 24 volts. That gives us a great redundancy on that whole system. Same thing with the dual inverters. They also give us redundancy because the 2 inverters are running in parallel as well. So their output is 240 volts. And we send that in parallel for the 2 inverters to the auto transformer, and the auto transformer gives us our split phase. And say we lost our 12 volt house bank, oh my gosh, then what? That would be a problem if that battery went out. We could take one of the batteries from the 24 volt strings and use that as our house battery. So it gives us a huge amount of flexibility as well. Wiring sizes, we got our currents down to 800 amps. That works great because the Victron distributors are 1000 amp bus bars. So we're well within than that, our switches, since we have 2 banks, our switches only need to be 400 amps. That was easy enough to find as well. Victron makes Orion 12 to 24 and 24 to 12 converters, chargers. Those work really well, so that was off-the-shelf stock. The wiring for the Quattros could be much smaller. So we ended up running with 2 sets of 2-aught wire running to each of these guys. So it's 8 2-aught wires. There's a lot of wiring going into it, but we're definitely meeting the Victron's requirements for the wiring size and also ABYC's requirements as well. So I was very happy about that. You can see these bundles back here. There's quite a bit of wire running through here for sure, but it all worked out in the end, and we've had no heating at all in the system. It's running nice and cool. So the wiring size has worked out for us. I'm super stoked about that as well. 24 has just been kind of for us the way to go. Now the batteries, let's talk a little bit about the batteries that we used. We're using the Epoch 12 volt 460 amp hour batteries. We have 5 of them. So 4 of them are in our 2S2P 24 volt bank, and then that 5th one is being used as our house bank. These are great batteries. They're waterproof. They're great for marine usage. They have an internal Class T fuse in them. These are the original version 1s of these batteries. They do have a version 2, and as we get into the installations, we'll talk more about the details of that. These have been working really, really well for us. The components we used in the system, as I mentioned before, are all Victron. So our inverters are Victron, our distributors are Victron, the auto transformer, the MPPTs, and also our Orion 12 to 24 and 24 to 12 volt converters. Most of them communicate with the Servo GX, which we added. Another issue with the old system was that you couldn't look at it off the boat. You couldn't check it out. You couldn't maintain it either. There's a small round display that was on the nav desk. Oh, it was great, but you have to kind of push little buttons to kind of check this and that. I really wanted a centralized display that could tell me what's the solar doing, what's the batteries doing, what is the inverters doing, all those sorts of things, and then be able to dig into each of those components and get details about them. And the Servo GX has been working great. It's living down here behind me, and we have that display up on the nav station. It's also hooked up through Starlink so that I can check it off the boat, which is awesome. So if we're somewhere and I just want to see, oh, how are we doing solar-wise today, I can totally check that out. In addition to the electrical designs, we also had to do a full mechanical design in here. So Fountaine Pajot puts all of their electronics and things in the port engine bay, for better, for worse, and more worse than better, I think. But that's where they are. All the wiring, original wiring, came in here, and there is a lot of room. I mean, we've got room on the back wall here. We've got room that goes internally, sort of under the bridge deck, and we've got this back wall here. There's a couple of problems with that, of course. We've got an engine in here. We could be exposed to the elements out here. This door is sealed, which is great, but it's just maybe not the best place to put it. But putting all this stuff in here, I needed to do full mechanical designs of the whole thing for the tabletop that I've got here that sits on top of the batteries, for the back wall that the inverters are mounted on, all of that, how big these boxes are, how all these bits fit together, and how they all mount on these back walls. I wanted to make sure that that was all designed before we started so that I knew I could get all of this equipment in there. So that was kind of a big deal for sure. From here, what I wanted to do was show you all of the updates to the original wiring and things I had to do, and there were quite a bit of it. There were boxes in here that had to go away because of physical constraints, but also we just weren't going to be using them anymore. Converting over to a house bank of lithium caused some other issues. We had to add a starter battery for our engine because originally it was starting off the house bank, and that was fine since they were all AGM batteries. We can't do that with the lithium. So the engine had to get its own battery. We had breakers that I really wanted to swap out. These breakers for the winches and the windlass and things were in 3 different places, and it was just kind of a mess. And there were 3 different breakers. I couldn't find them. I wanted to update. There's a charging box that allows, if either engine is started, to start pumping power to the other start battery. It sort of connects the 2 start batteries together. And since we're drawing power off of this start battery to charge the 24 volt lithium bank, I wanted to make sure if we ran just the starboard engine that we could still charge our lithium bank, either engine, which is great. The old wiring was a little sketch for sure. They had a ton of things going into a central bus bar and all on top of each other, and it was just a lot. So I added bus bars to the system. Originally, the system system had a 2000 volt amp multi-plus 2 inverter. That's a Victron product as well. It was just a little too wimpy, of course, for the whole boat. That had to be removed. There was old wiring left over from the old reverse osmosis, our water maker. I wanted to get all of that out of there, just clean things up, make it look nice, make it accessible. I wanted to reduce the possibility of chafe on wires, all sorts of things. Well, let's jump back in time at this point and get started in all of these changes that I had to do before we even got the system going. Today's a big day. We're starting on the complete electrical refit for the boat. We'll be adding lithium batteries, 2 new inverters, a whole bunch of stuff to the system. But first, I have to get into the existing system and pull some old bits out of it. There was a smart cruiser package, I think it's called, for the boat that was installed, and it's tied into the negative buses, and I've got to get all of that stuff out. It's not being used, and I think it's actually failed a long time ago. I've got other positive stuff I've got to do as well. Switches, the switch box over here needs to be removed. There's just a lot of work before I can even really get started. We've got all the mechanical and the electrical design work done. We've got all the parts ordered, but today is a big day because we're starting on the actual install. So it's the first part of August, just to give you a time frame, and I think this is going to go for a while. My guess, I'm really hoping we get this done before the boat show in October. That's my goal. We may need to push out a little bit if we have to, but it's a very big project. Yeah, so today's a monumental day, so I better get to it. I'm going to get this box out and see what we're dealing with to get that out, and then continue trying to sort through a bunch of these wires. So wish me luck. All this box seems to be is a large negative bus bar with several shunts in it. And they used master volt equipment to then tie those signals into the NEMA 2000 bus. Once on the NEMA 2000, it can be displayed on the chart plotter. But in the new design, this won't be needed because all of this will be handled by the Servo GX. Wrong color, of course, but it's still a 300 amp bus bar, so it'll be totally fine for this. And this will be great. I can get this up out of the way. Now, I need this space up in here because this is where the Orion chargers are going to go, and I have 4 of them that need to go in here and some other stuff. So that's why we had to get that thing off the wall, and it wasn't doing anything anyways. So, all right. So that's kind of that, I think. I can secure this up on the wall. No big deal. I don't want to drill any more holes, but I'll try to figure something out. Maybe I'll just use some tape or something. All right, well, that's the box out. That's actually super, super cool. That was something I was really worried about and went a lot faster than I thought. So we should be able to turn on the 12 volt now and pull the boat back up again. Yay! This guy here is the circuit breaker for the tender lift, and I'm going to leave this right where it is. It's in a great spot, actually. There's no need to move that at all. Behind there, that box back there is for joining the charging of the 2 engines. And I'm actually going to use this. This will allow me to actually pull power from the starboard engine as well as just the port engine. So that's pretty sweet. And you can see some wiring back there, the white wiring back there. Some of that is AC, some of it is DC. I ran it through here, put a hole in the wall there. This is a Seawater Pro. It's a really, really good water maker. And I needed to reinstall it. I knew that the power for it was all messed up. So over here on this side, see all those little holes in the wall? There was a big box there, right there, and all this wire going across. It was the strangest thing. So I've got it all cleaned up. I've got all that wire all sorted, and now the Seawater Pro is all wired in properly. It's the rest of the installation for it down there. So there's the high pressure pump, the RO membranes, and then the pre-pump down there. So that's where all that is. Today's project is going to be starting on the positive bus bars and all of these circuit breakers here. So let me show you what we got. Starting with this guy. So this big box here allows you to turn off the 12 volt service and allows you to jumper the starboard engine, and also this is for starting the port engine. This is a weird place for this. This is the windlass breaker, so this really needs to go away. This is the service breaker for the 12-volt house. Now this is going to be replaced, so we won't need this, but we will need this. But I can't have this box. So see the way it's sitting on top of the battery there? Our new batteries are probably about this high. They're quite a bit higher, and I need them to go all the way to the edge back here, maybe even a little further. So this is obviously in the way, so that's going to have to get removed. Now you're probably wondering about these guys. What about these? These are the switches that I installed for the solar. There's 3 of them. There's the other one up there. Now the reason they're sitting up where they are is they're actually going to go in this space up against the wall when this is out, and they will not interfere with the new batteries. So not a lot has changed over here with the 2 buses over here. I've kind of moved things around. You notice that circuit breaker just sort of sitting up there. Look at that guy just kind of hanging out there. Well, that's because the big box is gone here. It had the main house breaker, and it also had the windlass breaker as well. So I pulled all that out. Really all that's left is this single breaker here, and it's just tied into the main house battery bus back there. I think that's a pretty good start for now. It was a lot of work to get that stuff out. Kind of scary actually, but I got it out, and it made a really good spot for all the solar controller switches. Over here, right here, see this area that's right here to the left of the switches? This is going to go away. This will go away. I have a box for this, and I'm going to put this guy, which is one of the winches. This is the other winch, and the windlass breaker all in one box. One-stop shopping. So if anything goes wrong, you'll know exactly where to go for those breakers. That'll be awesome. It'll be great. So that's the wiring down here. This, I believe, is the actual wire to the windlass. There'll be a bus bar in this box, so you only need one power into it, and the power will go out into the various things. So that's gonna be pretty sweet. Next on our list is to start to prepare for the inverters, where they're going to go. I have to build a wall here on the outboard side, and the other problem is that there's a fan in here that is not working that I need to pull out because I need to be able to service it in the future. It can't be behind where the inverters are going. This whole area here, from this wall here all the way over to the back side of the solar controllers, is just going to be a wall, and that's where the inverters are going to go. So I have to have this guy out of there. The rest of these are just air tubes. They're fine, nothing to worry about, nothing to service back there. So I think it's going to be fine, but I want to show you something kind of funny. So it isn't running, hasn't been running for a while. I'd be able to hear it if it was, and I never hear anything down here when the engine's running. So anyways, check this out though. It's really funny. I pulled the top off this thing, right? So I wanted to be able to see it was inside there, and there's our impeller. And I thought, well, let me just spin it a little bit and see how it spins and see if it runs. And I'm like, oh, that's a weird noise. That sounds really funny. And so I grabbed it, and it just comes right out. That's it. It's literally not hooked to anything. It's just sitting in there. So you're probably like, well, what's it look like down in the bottom there? Well, that's it there. I assumed that the motor was screwed in and unscrewed itself, and is now somewhere. I don't know, it might even be down at the bottom of this tube. Who knows where it is? I'm going to pull all this out and find out. Yeah, so the things you find on a boat, that's hilarious. I'm guessing we're in for a new fan. I'm guessing. Anyway, I need some more hose, and I'm going to have to move this. And it takes its air from that height, which is right about up here anyway. So I think I'm okay with that height-wise. I'll just put a connection on here, run the hose up all the way up here, and then across to here, and then over to there is what I'm going to do. But I'm evidently going to have to get a new fan. It's hilarious. We're making great progress. I'm really happy with how it's coming out so far. It's kind of a crazy system for sure. We have almost all of our parts. We're missing one kind of important part though. Unfortunately, we could only get one of our inverters. Since they're a European 230 volt Quattro 2 inverter, they're actually pretty rare in this country, and I think Victron literally has to make them. So it's not going to be here for another 6 weeks, which is going to cut things kind of close for us.
If you like this content, consider subscribing to our channel. If you want real-time updates and benefits, consider another level and become a patron. It really helps us out.
Currently, right now, we're right at the top of September, and we want to get out of here hopefully by the end of October would be ideal, but we may or may not be able to. Not sure. I don't think the inverter is actually going to get here till first week of November, maybe a little bit later. That's unfortunate, but since our system has 2 inverters in parallel, we can actually activate the system with just one inverter. In fact, that's the whole point of having 2 of them in parallel, as you've got redundancy. So at any rate, we will keep you updated on this, and I'm going to give you a little more insight and detail on all this as we move forward. I didn't want to waste too much of your time on updating the old system because it's very specific to this boat. But now that all that work's done and we're actually starting the actual install, I think it's going to be really, really exciting. So this is going to be awesome.
Join us in our upcoming episodes where we continue the build out of our complete power system upgrade. As always, thanks for watching until the end, and until next time, safe travels. Bye!